Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics need counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko, once again, my friend, Dr. Issues.
Hello, we're still going strong.
Before we get started, I want to give a quick thank you to all of our listeners. You can find us on Google Play, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and as always, our primary website, capesonthecouch.live. We also have a Facebook page that you can interact with us. All of our episodes and posts go up there. We have a Twitter handle, Capes on the Couch, and our email address, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. So if there's a question that you've got or something that you'd like to mention to us, or something about maybe perhaps you have a recommendation for a future episode, please, we are very, very fan friendly. We want to hear from you, the listeners. We appreciate and love all of you who tune in every week. New episodes every Wednesday at 8 a.m. That's when they drop, because it's comic release day. And what better day is there to talk about comic books than Wednesday? This week's issue is centered on one Harley Quinn. And Doc, we mentioned her very briefly during the Joker episode, which was our second issue. But now Harley gets her own fully fledged centered episode all by herself.
Wow, taking a character that was originally designed to just be, I don't want to say filler, but, not designed for the long term, but then saying because of the outcry of how popular she was, she ends up being the center of attention.
I think it's very fitting. And certainly, at least from my perspective, I've gone to a number of comic conventions, and the amount of cosplayers as Harley Quinn in all of her various iterations and costumes, you could swing a dead cat and hit a Harley cosplayer at any of these cons.
With apologies to Catwoman.
Yeah, she will be addressed in a later episode, although she will get some discussion here as well. So Harley is an interesting character in that she was originally created for the Batman animated series. It's a rare instance in which a character is created in the animated medium, but as you said, becomes so popular that they bring her into the DC canon, so to speak. So Dini and Tim created Harley. She was originally just kind of supposed to be this one-off because they wanted a side character. They wanted a sort of romantic interest for the Joker. I forget if it was Dini or Tim knew Arlene Sorkin from Days of Our Lives. And at one point in that series, in a dream sequence, she wore a Harley Quinn costume. And so they wrote it to be basically with Arlene Sorkin in mind. They kind of took some of her personality traits and made it into this fully fledged character. And then, as I said, they went from the animated series, then they brought her into the comics, and the Batman Adventures Mad Love single issue kind of really expounded on her backstory. And she was Joker's psychologist when he was at Arkham.
Psychologist? Okay. You sure she wasn't a psychiatrist? I mean, that probably would have been better for the issue and for the media, right? I mean, psychologist. Okay, I'm joking, people. Just to point out, because this comes up all the time, and just, for education's sake, it means that she has a degree in psychology as opposed to psychiatry. Psychiatry is when you're a medical doctor and then you get training on top of being an MD or a DO. Point is, you have medical training first. Psychology is straight up. It can be academic, it can be clinical, but the point is it usually goes towards master's and PhD level. The only reason I bring that up is because I'm sure people make that mistake all the time. I hear it every single day. So now that I got that pet peeve off my back, keep going.
And psychiatrists can prescribe meds.
That's true. Yes.
That's one of the main differences that I use to distinguish between psychiatry and psychology, is that psychiatrists can prescribe medications for their patients. Psychologists can't.
although there are attempts at legislation that with proper training, some psychologists would be comfortable with prescribing medications, I think there are some risks involved, but that is a much more of a political debate than we really can discuss right now.
Yeah, and I'm not going to ask you to get into the whole ethics debate here. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Harley Quinn. So according to her backstory, she came from a very dysfunctional family and wanted to study psychology to get a better understanding of her situation. We'll certainly discuss that later and the impacts that that has on her moving forward. So she ends up interning at Arkham Asylum. She starts meeting with the Joker, starts talking to him through the, I guess, a combination of her naivete and his charm and charisma. She ends up falling in love with him and believing almost that she can, I don't want to say save him, but that she can help him. She becomes convinced that Batman is the source of all of his problems, and so she needs to help the Joker eliminate Batman. They go on crime sprees. Then she becomes tired of the Joker, and this is something that, again, we'll discuss, her on-off, again, relationship with the Clown Prince. So she leaves the Joker's side. Then she joins Poison Ivy. Now, that's a relationship that was intimated in the animated series, but certainly for censorship reasons, they really couldn't delve into some of the more, dare I say, sapphic undertones of that relationship. But there certainly were plenty of hints that this was not strictly just two gals hanging out with each other. So she joins Poison Ivy for a spell. She ends up back in Arkham. Now she's trying to become a bit of a better person. And she eventually convinces Bruce Wayne, who she does not know is Batman, to help get her paroled because he is the civilian member of the Arkham board that determines who can go for parole, because of course he is.
Wait, are you trying to tell me that a man of great influence and power with lots of money would somehow be involved in a major part of the infrastructure of the society at large?
I thought we said we weren't going to discuss politics here. So then she joins the Gotham City Sirens, and now it's the aforementioned Catwoman and Poison Ivy, and this little triumvirate. They're sort of doing things for themselves until she decides to betray them because she needs to help break Joker out of Arkham. Then we move into the New 52. Now she's part of Suicide Squad, and she uses those resources to help get the Joker's face back because the Joker's face had been removed during the death of the family storyline. And then you've got the Connor Palmiotti series, and this is, I don't want to say out of continuity because it certainly is within the DC continuity, but it's a very, very different setting for Harley. She's working at Coney Island, and she's sort of like an anti-hero, and it's a very bright and colorful series. And if I'm not mistaken, Amanda Connor just left the series or announced that she was leaving the series after 3-4 years, whatever it was. And that is a lot of what the modern incarnation of Harley Quinn is based on. A lot of cosplayers and fan understanding of Harley is based on that series. It was much more, I guess, geared towards female readers and teen readers as opposed to adults. And a little more slice of life style stuff for Harley, as opposed to the kind of over the top antics that she was dealing with the Joker. This was a little more as realistic as one could potentially say that, Harley Quinn could be. And then the Rebirth. So now you had the New 52, and then Rebirth happens, which DC again reboots their series. And now she's an inmate at Belle Reve. As of late, she's been the leader of a new Suicide Squad, and she's kind of unhinged and full tilt bat guano crazy. And then, of course, you have the appearance in the Suicide Squad movie. Margot Robbie, I think, was one of the better parts of that film. To say that there were better parts of that film.
For all of the complaints that several fans, including myself, had with the portrayal of the Joker, the portrayal of Harley Quinn really flips the coin. I did definitely.
But Two-Face wasn't in the movie. I'm sorry, man. You walked into that one.
Yeah, I guess I did.
But no, Margot Robbie did a fantastic job as Harley. Whether or not we're going to see a solo Harley film or we're going to get a side Joker film or a Suicide Squad sequel. Say that 5 times fast. I don't think, and according to Margot Robbie, she doesn't really know what the shooting schedule is going to be either, because DC and Warner Brothers executives can't figure out how to just form a coherent film universe.
Are you trying to say that the failures of DC Comics integrating their characters into a different medium aside from animation has been an abject failure? Or are you simply saying that they're totally incompetent when it comes to trying things that are going to appeal to a larger audience? Either way, I think you're right.
My response was just going to be yes. So thank you for ruining my punchline. So the point is, and then the Suicide Squad version of Harley is also one that we see a lot of cosplayers with the skirt and the bat, with daddy's girl, the daddy's little girl, whatever it is, on the bat and the pigtails. And so the cosplayers have a wide variety of costumes to choose from when it comes to Harley, both sexualized and non-sexualized, and we can discuss that a little bit later on. I guess the primary thing, since we've gotten her backstory out of the way, and she's a fairly youngish character, and yet one with a large impact on the pop culture zeitgeist. Her primary thing, first and foremost, obviously has to be her relationship with the Joker. And again, we did the episode on the Joker a couple episodes back. We really didn't touch on Harley all that much because in that episode, we were focused primarily on his relationship with Batman. But now with Harley, we can sort of revisit some of the things that we didn't get to discuss with the Joker. So Doc, as a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on Harley's relationship on again, off again with the Joker?
Harley is trying to fill a void. It's obvious that she's intelligent. Anyone that has that level of education has to go through a certain level of academic rigor. So it's not a matter of, and unfortunately I have seen this, where people assume that people in bad relationships, it means that they're unintelligent. They're not able to understand other people. And that's just wrong. In this case, she's looking for someone that is going to take care of her needs that had never been met before this. And in this case, she ends up interacting with, as we've already established, someone who is incredibly manipulative, incredibly charming, has a high level of energy that seems to become infectious towards all the people around them. It influences them for better or worse. And in her case, when you don't have much to work with, I may be making assumptions here, but the idea is that the Joker was telling her things about what he cared about at the time, which we know could be just about anything. But if it's going to focus on, for example, I'm going to turn this on its head. He's very focused on someone like Batman and his relationship with that person. Harley doesn't care about other people other than who she's interacting with at the time. So when she notices this incredibly influential person that's in her vicinity and she's going to have to work with and develop a strong connection with, because that's what therapy does, it does build strong connections, she's going to basically start modeling that. Unfortunately, the balance of power was not what it should have been in the professional relationship. It's a situation where, and I don't mean this to be deprecating towards anyone that's going through therapy, but the therapist has to have a certain level of control and has to set the boundaries. Unfortunately, Harleen Quinzel couldn't do that. And because of that, the Joker is the one that maintained the power in the relationship. And she acquiesced. She basically said, well, this guy has a lot of charisma and has a lot of ideas, and he seems to know what he's doing. I know that sounds strange to say, but because of all of that, I'm going to go along with anything he does. Now, the way I'm saying it sounds so contrite, but that's not the idea. This isn't something that's done consciously with anyone that's in a dependent situation. It's just simply the evidence that the person has. In this case, she's doing her job in an asylum, and based on all the information we have about Arkham and the Joker's relationships in Arkham, mainly don't mess with the Joker, she has evidence that this guy actually is someone that she wants to hitch her wagon to. So, hey, let's see where this wild ride takes us, because obviously it's going to be better than anything she's experienced yet, or at least that's the way she's established herself.
So he seduces, for lack of a better term, this wide-eyed, idealistic girl and takes advantage of her, uses her as his pawn in whatever schemes he can come up with. And because she is that flawed and as you said, there's a vacuum and there's a hole, that's how she ends up becoming part of this.
Yes. Naivete. That's the word that I'm thinking of right now. She doesn't have enough experience in the world to have something to compare this current situation with. She does have obviously her family background, her being raised as a child and relationships with, those immediate people. Obviously she would have an academic or school background. But once again, it's clear that if she was able to make it through such a long road in terms of her education, if she's able to do that, then she certainly has the capability of understanding other situations in life, but she just never got the chance. That's easy pickings for someone who's a complete psychopath.
True. And touching again on the fact that we've established that her family background is not a happy one. It's a dysfunctional family background. That certainly did not provide her with an example or positive examples of what a healthy, loving relationship should be. And this is not to say, of course, that people who come from dysfunctional backgrounds are not able to find healthy, loving relationships, but it is certainly more difficult when you're young and you use your parents as your sort of model for the world. If they are unhappy, bickering, etc., your worldview is thus going to be colored by what you see.
I think you said that perfectly. And for once, I'm actually going to directly reference the portrayal physically with Harley Quinn. I think it was the ideal choice for the modern version of this, because I'll admit I grew up with the black and red version of Harley Quinn, so that's what immediately pops to my mind. But I know modern now, that shirt saying, whatever version of it, daddy's girl, daddy's little girl, why choose
her daddy's little monster, I think is.
There you go. Why choose that? Because she needed that reassurance. It's the perfect choice for someone that doesn't even know what daddy would want. She doesn't have that ideal. She doesn't know what a true positive paternal figure is supposed to be, but she's an adult now. So clearly there's a dynamic here of survival where if you wanted to cut it down to its basics, a parent's job is to make sure that their progeny survive. That's it. We romanticize it way more than that. And we know that from, being social creatures, we need more than that. But ultimately, hey, you came into the world with nothing. You're an adult now. Mission accomplished. That's it. So in that sense, parents succeeded.
So taking an animalistic view then, one that's not really based on sentience, so to speak, but just the raw primal instincts of I need my children to survive. And as long as they make it to adulthood, then I've done my job. Whatever impacts I had on them are not a factor because they're here, they made it, they're on their own.
Correct. Unfortunately, with someone like Harley Quinn, who we've established is able to accomplish so much more with her life, she recognizes at some level that that's not the way things were supposed to be. And she's trying to, as we've established, at some point she tries to recreate parts of her life so that almost kind of like a reset button. I didn't have the childhood I wanted. I didn't have the family I wanted. Is there some other way that I can move forward and recreate that in some way? Now, commonly people think or jump to the conclusion, oh, well then she'll have her own chance because, she'll have her own, whatever you want to call it, relationship, partner, children, all those things. Comics are hit and miss when it comes to developing those types of relationships, but I think they did a spot on job with two characters in this case. We've already talked about the Joker. I think that what they did with Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn also fits that role.
So let's take that and segue into her relationship with Ivy or Pamela Isley, depending on which continuity and how you want to view the nature of Poison Ivy as a person. And we can certainly talk about Ivy in a later episode. But again, now this was referenced, again, sort of, dare I say, in a cheeky fashion, pun intended, in the animated series. And then it was built upon in the various iterations since then. But the notion that Ivy and Harley have this homosexual relationship with each other. It's non-monogamous, according to Connor and Palmiotti. So at the very least, we've established now that Harley is bisexual. She's got this now lesbian relationship with Ivy, whose very power allows her to utilize pheromones to seduce people and convince them to do whatever it is that she wants them to do. The possibility exists there for, once again, an imbalance of power within the relationship. I don't know to what extent it can be said that Ivy uses the pheromones to control Harley. And I believe at some point that Harley is in fact immune to some toxins because of her relationship with Ivy, that Ivy has somehow cultivated this ability in Harley to minimize her ability to be affected by toxins. But still, the fact remains that whether it's with men or with women, Harley always seems to get the short end of the stick when it comes to her relationships. So I don't know if you want to expound on that a little bit.
Sure. So in this case, I'm going to contrast her relationship with the Joker. In the case of the Joker, you already pointed out, he has much more physical power. I mean, it's very obvious the way it's been portrayed in terms of what he's capable of with her. And I don't know if it's on purpose that's a masculine versus feminine thing. That's not exactly what I was focused on with this. But my point is he's domineering. He knows that he wants to be in control of her. I'm actually going to put a spin on this with Poison Ivy, saying that she actually, in many of the portrayals, takes a much more protective role. She is willing to do things for her, actually be nice to her, in the sense that it's not just, here's something so that you stay on my side, which is a common tactic that the Joker will use. In other words, he'll do something that pisses Ivy off and say, by the way, I'm sorry, and she'll forgive him.
Harley.
I apologize. Do something to Harley and then say, I apologize at the end. As opposed to Poison Ivy basically saying, hi, what can we do together that's going to, help you out and ultimately get what I want too? Much more, at least trying to create a better balance, as opposed to what the Joker was doing. Now, unfortunately, I'm not saying that it's an equal relationship. I'm just saying that Poison Ivy wants to make sure it's as equal as she can influence. Because unfortunately, I would say that Harley Quinn is so, she's malleable. She's able to be bent to other people's wills that have stronger wills than her at this point. So Ivy could have just as easily dominated her as the Joker, but she chooses not to. In a way, you could say that's modeling a more positive relationship. I don't know if that's the way they wanted to do it in the comics, but it at least gives the opportunity for the other person to grow. It gives the opportunity for someone like Harley Quinn to start developing her own style, her own pattern of how she wants to deal with things. And we do see that at times in all forms of media. As a matter of fact, I think those are the most gratifying moments for the fan base, at least, from things I could think of off the top of my head, but we can expound on that in a little bit.
Well, I was going to tie into that as well, because we talk about the fact that Harley is used in her relationships, both by the Joker and by Poison Ivy. But yet there are those moments where she is almost a model of female empowerment, in that she was being used, particularly again by the Joker, and she leaves him. And it's a recent issue in the Connor Palmiotti run where she beats 7 shades out of the Joker in his cell, bites part of his face off, and then leaves him. And she's like, that's it, I'm done with you. And I think that is very empowering for women, given that I do see a frightening amount of positive, dare I say, romanticized portrayals of the Joker-Harley relationship in social media by women that say that they're damaged and broken and that they're Harley and they're out there looking for their Joker. And I find that to be just scary from a psychological standpoint. And why would you want to willingly enter into a relationship that is so incredibly damaged? But getting back to the empowerment point, again, it's almost the dichotomy of Harley as a character, that she is at the same time, as you said, incredibly malleable and a pawn in whatever relationship she's in. And yet she still has this agency wherein she's able to do things for herself. And it's almost, depending on the writer, unfortunately. And I think that's discrediting her as a character because she's capable of more if there was some consistency in her portrayals.
I mentioned earlier that the Joker usually has an infectious type of energy. Without even referencing him directly, I think it becomes clear over time in almost every portrayal that Harley Quinn has a high level of energy as well. The thing is, she's always under someone's thumb. She's always under someone else's control. And that energy becomes built up over time. It basically needs some room to escape. I mentioned that the way Poison Ivy deals with it is much more in a suggestive style, meaning, you might want to take this path with your energy. Let's see what happens, as opposed to the Joker basically saying, do what I want you to do, and constantly saying that until Harley says no. And when Harley says no, she doesn't say the words no. She basically goes on a tear. She explodes. When that happens, there's usually high levels of destruction involved, not just towards the person that's in the relationship, but also anyone that tries to intervene. In some ways, that can be a negative, the obvious violence that you already pointed out. And yes, I guess it could be construed if she's doing it against someone who's an oppressor, then it's standing up for herself, but the levels that she goes towards are no better than the person she's attacking. That's one side. But there have also been portrayals where she uses that energy in a concerted effort to say that I was wrong, or I'm in a bad position. I need to get into a better one. And I think those are the parts that are more and more being advocated for in all forms of media with her, that indicate that, yes, things could have been bad before through no fault of your own, or maybe through your own mistakes. That's okay, too. But you can improve upon them, and you can do it yourself. You don't have to rely on someone else to do it for you. As with so many things in mental health, that small statement is probably the most powerful statement that any person can realize. And with someone like Harley Quinn, depending on who's writing it, as you said, it may take a tone where that's a consistent and growing change, or it could be something that happens for a brief period of time only to fall back to the status quo. And honestly, life imitates art there, because there are cases where people do make lasting change, and there are times where people make temporary changes that just fall back to what they were.
So playing off of that instance and the discussion where you're saying she has a high level of energy, that tends to lead to an impulsive streak in her where she gets these flashes of ideas. It's shown that, at least in the Mad Love, in the comic and in the animated adaptation, she almost kills Batman. She captures Batman. She has him tied up, and she comes closer to killing him. According to Batman, she comes closer to killing him than the Joker ever did. I think that goes to her intelligence, that her impulsive streak is almost the thing that holds her back. She has these spurts of energy, and she has this intelligence that she could harness in a positive fashion if she could maintain a coherent and forward train of thought and progress. But her impulsive streak, dare I say almost an ADD sense, thereby sort of distracts her and derails her from any progress that she makes. So I don't know if that's something that you've noticed and want to discuss, but at least from my perspective, Harley is almost promise unfulfilled in that she could be so much better than she is. She just can't get out of her own way.
Focus. That's something that I know I always try to maintain, even if I don't do that good a job. But
you and me both.
That becomes an issue with planning. And that's where I think her greatest failing lies when we talk about the dependency. she is able to do the legwork. She's able to do every part of a plan itself. But if you actually asked her to come up with a coherent scheme that would take more than 2 or 3 steps, or take a extended period of time, I'm not sure she is really designed for that. And I specifically say designed because she's a character, she basically likes to see what's immediately in front of her and using her intelligence find a way to confront that in the moment. She ad-libs. She does an excellent job with it. I'm not exactly sure how well she would be able to construct beyond that. And no one person is good at everything, so that's okay. But going back to that original point of the dependency, it basically means she always looks at herself as a lieutenant and she needs a captain.
So it's a sort of internalized submission.
Exactly.
Now, moving forward, then, how would you treat someone like Harley Quinn? And we're going to start with the in-universe. This is going to be very interesting because you are attempting to perform therapy with someone who has therapeutic training and a background in this. So I wonder what issues you're going to face when dealing with someone who knows potentially what you're going to say and what you're going to try to get her to do. And because of that impulsive streak, she's going to fight you on it.
I'd actually have to be careful with myself because treating anyone that's considered a colleague is incredibly delicate. So my first step would be to establish the type of rapport that says, in a certain walk of life, we're equals. Unfortunately, this is not that time. For anyone to have any progress, they have to acquiesce, which actually, unfortunately, I'm actually playing into her dependency. I'm saying I'm number 1, you're number 2. I'm not trying to do it in a heavy-handed way, but the point is I'm going to have to model this in a way that at some point we're back to equals again. When that is established, that means that the person is actually at a point that they can function well in society. Although they would still need that, I think they would still need those guideposts. So in universe, basically what I would have to do is, because she also acts out so incredibly aggressive, I hate to say this, but yeah, it might be in a situation where at first I have to secure the area. She's restrained. She's in Arkham. Maybe it's the Hannibal Lecter mask on top of it, everything, but the point being, like, I want to make sure that she's secured. I do not want to deal with this in a situation where I'm pretending that she's not capable of doing anything. Sorry for the double negative there. That's the first step.
Well, and she's indicated in all of the various portrayals that she is a very skilled fighter. So I think just from a personal safety perspective, you would want to take any and all necessary precautions.
Yeah. The other thing that I would do, honestly, is go ahead and I would play a bit, no pun intended, on the Joker aspect of it. I want to know from her side what is everything that she knows about that man, what her thoughts are in the time period, because depending on what she's thinking in that moment, that's how I attack it. If he's pudding and he is the love of her life,
Mistah J.
Yeah. Then I have to do everything I can to point out the fallacy of that. All of the negative things that he's done to her, that he's done to other people, and how terrible that must be for society and all those things. All the things that a mental health professional with ethics would detest. All of those things. Play to her professional side. If it's, he absolutely ruined my life and I'm glad that I almost killed him and I should have killed him and all of those things, I need to tone back the violence part, but I would compliment the side that, wow, that's impressive. You really stood up for yourself there. It's amazing how you were able to recognize such a negative relationship and act appropriately. Well, once again, carefully saying that. Don't physically attack people, please. Basically playing that up. And saying that, I'm glad you're able to demonstrate you're able to handle adverse relationships and situations that are going to lead to negative outcomes. Okay, so from that standpoint, if I had to get to the point of just baseline saying Joker bad, rest of society good, I think I might do that. I'll admit I haven't quite established what I would do in terms of her other relationships with her family or with Poison Ivy, but I think I would have a similar approach, just saying, because also I have to be careful and identify that I'm a male, and so I don't automatically understand a lesbian relationship. I should not assume that because it's one person interacting with another that I know all the intricacies, or I'm going to perfectly understand all of the intricacies. So I would have to be very careful, but
check your privilege. It's a thing.
I'm well aware that it's a thing. I have to be careful about my visceral responses to certain circumstances, because many times in these situations, the patient wants to talk about things that maybe the therapist doesn't want to talk about. And what I mean by that is private things, sexual things. That's true for any situation, but they're very important. It's usually the opposite. It's usually people don't want to talk about those things, and it's the therapist's responsibility, if it's important, to delve into them. In this case, to be honest with you, with Harley Quinn's impulsivity, I don't think she would have an issue bringing up things just for the shock value to see what my response is. So I have to remain stoic. I have to remain kind of stone-faced, just saying like, yeah, that sounds important. That's interesting, while still validating the fact that she's okay in what appears to be a mutual relationship. So in other words, Poison Ivy and Harley may have many positive traits, and I have to acknowledge those, and I have to encourage them. Or she could say that they're on the outs. And, you know, I should point out that, okay, that's a sad time for you. You know, how are you going to process that? No, you're not going to release hyenas onto her lair and try and, you know, tear her to shreds. You know, you're going to mourn, you're going to grieve a little bit, and you're going to have, you know, a sad night with some other people, you know, and you're going to move forward. And I know for most therapies, it's not that directive, but for someone that's dependent, like I said, usually they're going to need that level of direction. In terms of her family and her interactions with them, it's not much different. Although with all the information I have in universe, I think I would be encouraging her. Obviously, it's her decision, but so many times she seems to want to cut ties with them when things aren't going well. And in all honesty, there's no indication that she needs to have them involved in her life. So if she wants to move forward to do something else, honestly, I would say go ahead. That's totally fine. There may come a time, unfortunately, where she starts making more of an attachment with me than she should. That is very common for people who are dependent, you know, because now I'm the one that's going to provide for them and be their shelter. This is the most critical point. I basically would have to find a way to not necessarily sever the connection, but make sure that it maintains a level of professionalism. Like I said, if I can make it so that she now sees us as equals in the profession, that's the positive side. If it becomes, wow, I am your, you know, I'm going to be her ultimate mentor, not as ideal, but could be worked with. If it's I'm her new love interest because I know so much about her and I've helped her so much and everything else, then that's an absolute deal breaker. You need to get out of this office and I need to find you another therapist. These are the possibilities, and I've actually seen all of these happen. Believe me, it actually is nerve-wracking because unfortunately you can't separate your own emotions all the time, although as a professional, I'm certainly capable of doing it and I have to do it on a regular basis, but it's a lot easier said than done. I know that this has been an intense mouthful, but these types of cases deserve that level of attention.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. And I don't know, I guess moving into the out of universe, into the more real world application of this, how different it would be, because the nature of codependency in relationships and also the impulsivity are certainly not things that are so foreign to us as people, which I think is one of the things that makes Harley such a relatable character and so fascinating for the past, I guess, 25, almost 30 years, is this notion that we've all kind of had situations, I think, in various points in our lives in which we were in a relationship with someone who wasn't good for us, or we were connected in some way to someone that had a negative impact on who we are. I think there's a little, dare I say, and it's going to sound cliche, there's a little Harley Quinn in all of us. And so I think that a lot of what you've said in universe would also apply out of universe. But is there anything differently that you would handle, given that obviously no one, or at least not that I can think of, is going to be in a codependent romantic relationship with a serial mass murderer, or a pheromone controlling herbologist?
From a practical standpoint, I think what I had said earlier to establish the scenario, I don't need as many restrictions. In other words, no, I don't need a straight jacket. I don't need a face mask or things like that on her, or him. I recognize that there are some issues related to gender here as well, but that really wasn't meant to be the focus. It just so happens that because she's female, I approach it from, like I said, often the masculine feminine dynamic in terms of strength, but that's not necessary. The rest of it really is the same. I don't need to give examples of violence in relationships, be it abuse or not, not even necessarily meeting the level of abuse, just simply there's a power indifference. And how does the person with less power end up handling that on a daily basis? Just giving everything from basic practical tips to dealing with the emotional side of a reaction to something that reestablished that power indifference. It's much more of a simplified maintenance in most cases once you get through the deep work of how previous relationships established that dependency to begin with. And it can be incredibly rewarding on both sides. There's nothing better than, having a person that doesn't know how or acknowledges that they don't know how to do certain things in their life because either they never learned or never cared because it was already handled. And then seeing the change in level of independence, it's the type of thing that makes you realize that this is the reason you went into mental health in the first place. There's something about human beings that we know when we see someone in pain or we see someone in trouble, and there is a natural response usually to say, I want to help this person. A dependent personality plays on that as well. So the biggest thing I would say, both in universe and out universe, is reach the threshold where you're empowering that other person to be independent, but do not get to the point where you're now taking over for the people that were being overbearing or dominant to that person. That is the fine line that we have to walk. And it's one that if you don't recognize it yourself, then my goodness, make sure that you're relaying these cases to another professional, either in your own therapy or with a colleague that you can confide in. Because if you don't recognize it, you're going to do more harm than good. I'll leave it at that.
Wow, getting very real.
You said real life.
Listen, I'm not fighting that or arguing the point. I'm just pointing out that this got very, very serious. To, I guess, end on the therapy note, and we can discuss this in universe and out of universe as well, because Harley has been shown to have an anti-hero streak, so to speak, where she is capable of doing good under certain circumstances. Is there a point in the therapy in which you think that Harley or someone like a Harley out of universe, in real world terms, could ultimately take all of the positive things that they have and become a productive member of society?
100%, absolutely. And I'll tell you the moments where you have to evaluate that with each patient, especially with the level of dependence. It's when at some point they say to you in one iteration or another, why am I even here? Why am I doing this? I don't really need you. Because there are so many possibilities with that type of statement. It can mean, I'm very frustrated. I don't like going into all of these details and I want to escape. Okay, well, that's not a positive outcome, and we'll work through that. It can also mean, I am recognizing that I have my own capabilities and my own goals, and I'm at the point where I want to establish them for myself and I don't need a leash. That is a potentially very positive outcome. And although the tables may turn a little bit, and it may be the therapist who has reservations because they don't want the person to do anything wrong. It's also the therapist's responsibility to acknowledge that even if that person makes a mistake in that independence, that's better than going back to being dependent and being willing to say, you know what? This sounds like an opportunity where we would take a break. Instead of seeing you every 2 weeks or every week, how about we make it 3 months? And the person may respond that they don't want to do 3 months. They may want to negotiate. In other words, they may want to demonstrate the ability to push power back and forth, in which case that's even better because it means that they're aware that you can push power back and forth, and you may have to sever ties. And you have in the back of your mind, and yes, I am saying this directly personally from previous cases, you may have in the back of your mind like, oh boy, is this really a good idea? And then you realize, well, that's the point. I'm not their parent. I'm their therapist. Go off into the world. Let's see what happens. I think it'll be for the positive. And you leave them on that note. So yes, to go back to your original question, absolutely, this is the way that a person can get to that point.
So you get them to the point where they believe that they're capable of positive impact, and then you let them go and see what they can do.
You got it.
Fascinating. Like I said, that's one of the things that makes Harley such a fascinating character, is because we've all been in similar circumstances. And that's one of the things that I love about this show, is getting to discuss these various issues, again, no pun intended, but getting to discuss these topics on a weekly basis and getting to draw corollaries to different facets of our own daily lives and situations and circumstances that we've all experienced. It's the human condition. I remember, a couple episodes back when we were discussing the Tony Stark and all of the narcissistic things. And I don't want to say a minor epiphany. It was one of the situations where I knew what was going on. I just didn't always have the clarity to address it. And I certainly hope that with each episode, there's at least someone listening who has a similar realization that maybe they're in a relationship now, like Harley Quinn, where they are the submissive and not in a good sense, but they are lacking in the power dynamic, and it's not as egalitarian as it should be. And maybe they go, this is kind of sounding similar, and that they don't romanticize it, and that they do ultimately get some help. That's why we have those disclaimers at the start and end of every episode, because we do ultimately want to connect with our listeners on that level. We do enjoy obviously discussing the comic book characters, and Doc, you and I do appreciate the nerdy aspect of getting to talk about comic books and the different universes.
Yeah. And I know this is total non sequitur, but I had to say it. I've been waiting to say this like this entire episode. For the love of God, the red and black was way better than this current thing. I'm sorry. I think that was just a much cooler outfit. Okay. So if anybody wants to keep doing this, oh man, I'm sorry. I just had to say that. That's just the geek in me. I just had to get my opinion out there. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, you're certainly entitled to it, but it's the notion that we can talk about these very geeky things and at the same time have a positive impact, to bring it back to what we were just discussing with Harley. And it's about bringing a positive effect and an impact and good, throwing good out into the world and hoping that good comes back to you. So I know we got really deep and philosophical there for a second. I'm sorry. So let's just totally switch gears then and go into the fun part of every episode, and what happens when Harley ends up on Doc Issues' couch.
So, Dr. Quinzel.
That's right, Doctor.
Okay. So what led you here to Arkham?
I got arrested again. I bought all that stuff fair and square. It's not my fault the hyenas attacked a security guard.
Oh boy. Okay. So I guess usually if they refer you to me, it's because you're going straight now.
No, I'm shacking up with Ivy.
That wasn't what I meant, but that's okay. That's okay. All relationships, it's all right.
Better than Mistah J.
Oh, okay. Who's Mr. J?
The Joker.
Oh.
Oh, you've met him too.
Okay, this isn't about me. This is about you.
Don't pull that transference, countertransference crap on me, Doc. I know all your tricks.
Oh, that's a great point. You definitely have a good professional background there, right?
I didn't go to clown college.
Oh, okay. My goal then is to help you get back to that professional level, right?
Every time I try, I always end up back here.
Oh, okay. Well, what's different now? I mean, clearly something's changed because you said you were out and doing better for yourself, and now you're back here. Yeah, what's different?
It's Ivy. She's really sweet on me. She asks me what I want.
Huh. Okay. Well, actually, that's a very important question. What do you want?
I want to be free. I want to smell fresh air. I want to smell flowers. Especially Ivy's flowers. They really smell sweet. I want to get my life back. And I never want to think about that damn Joker ever again.
What on earth?
Come on, Halls.
Oh no.
Mr. J, what are you doing here?
I couldn't leave my best girl in here with this quack. Hiya, Doc. Shocked to see me, aren't you?
Dr. Quinzel, you were making such progress. You were having a breakthrough.
Aw, I could never leave my puddin'.
Come on, Pumpkin. Let's go. I've got a fun night planned at the zoo. And Doc, pay no attention to the sounds. That's just the elephants.
Why does this always happen to me?
Well, Doc, I hope you have some of that Tony Stark money saved up so you can fix the hole in your office.
Hey, I could have sworn Arkham is the type of facility that would have, some sort of slush fund for that sort of thing,
Well, given that the walls seem to break down on the reg, I would imagine there's probably a very high earmark in their budget for construction and infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's one Mr. Wayne that's going to cover all that. By the way, I'm upping my billing charges because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, you seem to be threatened on an almost weekly basis. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Capes on the Couch. Next episode is about Jessica Jones. So we've got a lot of material there to mine from. We're a little behind as far as trying to schedule it to time it with the Netflix season 2 premiere. But hey, better late than never. Doc, anything else you want to add about Harley before we close?
I just wish I didn't have to deal with the Joker ever again.
Well, we'll see if we can make that happen, but we certainly make no promises. So thank you very much for listening. New episodes come out every Wednesday. We are on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Capesonthecouch.live is our email address. You can find us there all the time. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Twitter handle, Capes on the Couch. And if you want to shoot us an email, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. I hope you really like this. If you like everything that you've heard, please subscribe and leave us a very positive review, because now that we're on iTunes, we can really get our numbers up and try to see if we can build towards that. What's that? Hot and featured, I think, is the rising chart. So we want to get on there so that everybody knows us and hears about us and loves our stuff. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.